Welcome back to the channel. Scotland's winless run continues. Where's it all going wrong? So, we qualified for 2 European Championships, which has been amazing. And I have been, there's been a lot of that kind of negative momentum towards Steve Clarke is starting to build a little bit. And the thing is, I'm very hesitant because I'm not gonna lie, I've got a soft spot for Clarke for what he's done for Scotland in the past few years and how amazing it's been to be at this tournaments. But when do you start asking the question, is this squad better than what he's delivering right now? And when we get to these European tournaments, we get put out by Hungary, and you kind of look at that and you go, we were good enough to beat them on home soil, you know what I mean? And I just think that there seems to be something that's went wrong with, I don't know if it's the system or the players buying into it. What are your thoughts on this?
So I've got a one-word answer. Is this squad better than what Steve Clarke's getting out of them? No. Absolutely not. I think that the guy has squeezed every ounce of success out of that squad. I think there's a sort of, entitlement that's started to appear in the Tartan Army that they expect to win things now. So if we go back pre the European Championships, like you're saying, we've got to 2 European Championships. I think that's gave Scottish football fans a heightened sense of what this squad's capable of doing. I think they have punched above their weight for the last 5 years or however. I think Clarke's maybe been in charge since 2019, so it's maybe been 5 or 6 years. I think he's got them punching above their weight, and I genuinely don't understand the negativity that's starting to come round the guy. Because again, I'll just repeat what I was saying. I think he's got everything out of that squad that anybody could, and I think replacing him would be a big mistake. I think sacking a guy and put who are we going to get? Who's going to take over would be my question. But no, I don't think they're better than. I think he's probably a better manager than they are a squad.
I'm inclined to agree, but just to play devil's advocate a bit for people that might disagree with what you just said there, I think that if you look at the way the team is set up, he's obviously had them well drilled the past few years, but it does feel to me a little bit like teams have figured us out in terms of the way we play, and there seems to be, you could argue there seems to be a lack of ability to adapt that system. For example, in the Euros, you're starting Ralston at right back, and I love Ralston, right? But at what point, when you need to score goals, do you want to bring on wingers like James Forrest or people that can bring a bit more of an attacking output? And there was no point in any of the games in the Euros that likes of Forrest, or I'm trying to think of the other attacking players, but we did have other attacking options on the bench that did not get used at all in the Euros. And I think that is a little bit disappointing in the sense of, when you need to score goals, Ralston's not going to get you forward. Guys like that in the wing mix, it's different when you get Robertson and Tierney or whatever, but as soon as one of those guys are out, if Tierney's out, the quality, we had Hickey, who was a big miss as well. There was guys that were missing in the system that would have helped, obviously. But I think that the frustration is coming from what I can see from a lack of adapting to certain games and a lack of wanting to say, can we attack teams a little bit more here? It seems to me like a lot of teams have sort of figured out the way in which we play, because if you look at it objectively, we have only played one particular way the whole time that he's been manager.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that the Scotland team of late have been quite one-dimensional. I don't think that's got to do. I think that's got to do with the personnel. I agree with you. So I was disappointed not to see James Forrest, but when I think about the games, I'm struggling to see a point where it would make sense to bring him on. I think that he's not a wing back to start. So I know that there's people screaming, why not try James Forrest at wing back? You're at a major tournament, experimenting like that. I just think I'm like, wow, what? But I think that in that sense, very much like any other team, see when you rely on a player like Scott McTominay to be like your goal scorer, like an attacking midfielder, I think you're always going to get found out because they can just shut somebody down like that. And I genuinely see when I look at the Scotland team. So if we look at the team that started the Portugal game the other night, right? Angus Gunn in goals, no for me, terrible. No, he pulled off a couple of absolute incredible saves, but he let their equalising goal should have been saved. So what's the point in that? What's the point in the guy pulling off an absolute worldy save and then 5 minutes later his wrist made out of candy floss? Do you know what I mean? And so no good enough for me. Anthony Ralston, no good enough. Grant Hanley, get to fuck. Like Scott McKenna, nope. Andy Robertson, right, amazing. Billy Gilmore, blows hot and cold for me. I don't think that'll be a popular opinion amongst people, but I genuinely think that he turns up sometimes and he disappears others. I don't think he's got the consistency to be that sort of anchor in the defensive midfield. Kenny McLean, nope. John McGinn, yes. Scott McTominay, yes. Ryan Christie, you know, I think that Ryan Christie doesn't. You see people in the Premier League, they talk about Ryan Christie, he gets talked up a wee bit, but then you see him in a Scotland jersey, I just don't see the same player. And then Lyndon Dykes, you know. So the centre, the spine of the team through McKenna, Grant Hanley, Gilmore and Dykes is just not good enough for me. And I don't think any manager, especially that back four, three of that back four, if they were, you know, Anthony Ralston at Celtic's a good backup, and I really like Anthony Ralston, and actually a couple of assists in the games, and I think going forward he's a real asset and his balls into the box are great, but you know, I think he gets found out defensively. But I get that spine for the goalkeeper to the centre forward is just so weak for me, and I think that's something that Scotland have always struggled with, whether it's been we've lacked a goal scorer, which we do right now. I don't think Dykes or
Adams.
I don't see them as a goal scorer. So we've either had a goal scorer and we've not had the ability to get the ball to that goal scorer, whether it be Kenny Miller, Lee Griffiths, now actual natural strikers, or we've got a decent sort of way to build through, but we just don't put the ball in the back of the net. And again, see when you rely, it's kind of like the Rangers thing with Tavernier, when you rely so much on one player, there's going to come a day where they're going to dry up. And McTominay scored the other night, but I just feel like we rely too much on Tierney, Robertson, McTominay, and McGinn, and we just rely far too much on the four players. And neither of the four players are the best player in their team. Do you know what I mean? Like they're all kind of, maybe John McGinn, you know, maybe you could challenge that, but I just think that there's just so many weak points in the team, and this isn't even like, mate, you know, let me read out the names that come off the bench as well, which is an important thing. Tommy Conway, I don't even know who that is. No being nasty about that, I don't know who that is. Ryan Gould, you know, Lewis Morgan, and Ben Doak. Like I'm just like, that isn't good enough. You know, the guys come on and we were at one each, and they're bringing on Cristiano Ronaldo. Do you know what I mean? And like, I think there's another couple of names maybe in that Portugal that come off the bench. So they had João Felix come off the bench. Yeah. João Neves, Ruben Neves, and Cristiano Ronaldo. So there's their subs.
And I think as well, part of the reason why these games are so difficult is because we've done so well in the Nations League. We got to the first tier. We got promoted into the first tier. And then you're playing teams like Portugal and Poland, and you know we're playing against the best teams now because we've done so well in the first place. So you need to have that context. I think as well, guys like Hickey and Tierney add so much quality to what you just spoke about there in that spine. And we've been unfortunate that some of our best players, particularly in Tierney's instance, have been so injury prone. And if the likes of Tierney and Hickey could just stay fit, they could add so much to that team.
Yeah, and Lewis Ferguson was another big loss.
Yeah.
You know, that guy had a great season in Italy, and then we went to the Euros and he was injured. So I think there's probably like a good starting 11 out with the goalkeeper and the striker. I think there's probably like a good 9. Maybe just that centre half gives me the fear.
Yeah, I think a lot of the problems as well from what you're saying when you're reading out that team to me is when you look at the spine and the centre backs, you know, a lot of these guys are aging. Grant Hatton is in his kind of later 30s now. McKenna might as well be 40 with how much pace he's got. And like, you're just looking at it and going, you're bringing in, how bad are our goalkeeping options that Steve Clarke started to look at that guy that played for Norwich to come in and play for us? Do you know what I mean? You kind of looking at, you're wondering about the depth of the team and going, we can't have that many options if he's going and reaching out to hang his guns and you want to play for Scotland, do you know what I mean? So he obviously doesn't rate the other keepers that much. And like you say, even Lyndon Dykes, what is he nearly? I think he's either 30 or nearly 30 now.
Yeah.
Playing for QPR in the bottom half of the championship. You know, he's not going to beat a Portugal's defence or a Poland defence, is he, and score a great goal. So there is that lack of quality. And I do have a lot of sympathy for Clarke in terms of the pressure that he's getting in that way. But I also think that he doesn't help. Like, I'm going to be honest, I don't think he helps himself with the way he talks to the media.
Yeah, I mean, he's dry and he's got a habit of being kind of defensive. Yeah. You know, very defensive.
But I think that the problem is that feeds into it almost a wee bit.
Yeah.
Because I think it feeds into this idea that he either feels the pressure or he just tries to dismiss it. And I think that's almost making fans frustrated with him. Because you want a manager that's going to say, because like, I remember one of the first questions he asked is obviously, you know, the Euros didn't go to plan and, you know, like what the fans were quite disappointed by it, what have you done to address it? And he just was like, well, sometimes it just doesn't go your way. But before he said that, he was like, who said that? Who's saying that to you? Do you know what I mean? To this journalist? And you're like, mate, it's a totally reasonable question to ask you about that.
It's kind of like the way Stratton was.
Yeah, and it's like
going to just give a straight answer and stop fucking about.
The thing is, though, eventually if the media turns on you, then more the fans turn on you. And this is where it gets a bit. I just think the way that he talks isn't helping himself. I do think that when you talk about preparing for a major tournament, you're totally right about the idea of like not wanting to play Forest in a position he's not comfortable with. But what I would say is, when you qualify for that, you've got a good 6 months to a year to select your squad and think about things about these tournaments. And for me, I don't mind if you have a specific system you want to play, but what bothers me a little bit, I think what bothers a lot of Scotland fans is that why in all that time that you've had with this squad, is there never a plan B? Why is there not? You know how you're saying there's no system for James Forrest to fit in? That is also as a fault of the manager. Because you got to go, you need to have a system where we obviously set up quite rigid and defensive, right? So if we end up 1-0 down, you need to have a system where you can change it and go, let's go 4-4-2, or do you know what I mean? Do something like that.
Yeah, and I think I think if we had two strikers, I'd love to see us go 4-4-2.
But I think Lyndon Dykes and Shea Adams with a pair would be great together. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying like these things might not work, right? But the point is that he's had a lot of time with this squad. And when you go to the Euros and you're 1-0 down against Hungary and you need to score, change the system so you can bring on guys like Forrest.
Which I agree. I think on that, when we're talking about the spine of the team, I genuinely thought that Craig Gordon and John Souttar would have been a better option than Angus Gunn and Ryan Porteous. I mean, I do not like Ryan Porteous. I don't see what people. I mean, if anybody's ever said Ryan Porteous is a good player, I don't see it. He's a bomb scare. And we've seen that at the Euros. Do you know what I mean?
The tackle was a disgrace.
I mean, he totally panicked and just threw himself at the ball. You know, it's terrible. Like schoolboy stuff. And I think that in a Scotland jersey, Craig Gordon's a better option than Angus Gunn. But I said this to somebody and they were like, you don't see what they're like in training. Yeah. And you didn't see what they were. Both of these guys that we're mentioning here, Gordon and Souttar, were in the pre-squad and get dropped out. And it's either he doesn't like John Souttar, or John Souttar's terrible, because Ryan Porteous is terrible for me.
Yeah.
So if he's
Well, the thing is-
putting you out a squad, I
Yeah.
think you need to take a look at yourself, do you know?
I mean, when you look at the thing is, when we talk about not seeing the training and stuff, you need to remember that Craig Gordon got a really big injury at a late age and has came back. He hasn't played games for Hearts, and it may be a case of, and those injuries have finally caught up with him, and his age has caught up with him, and he's not as sharp as he used to be. Because if you go to training and he's conceding loads of goals, and we don't see that, but Steve Clarke sees that.
Yeah, that's it.
And also, John Souttar, in fairness, I agree with you about the thing with Porteous, but I would also say he's not exactly started the season very well for Rangers, has he? And it looks a bit, to be honest, in their defence, I think it looks like a bit of a liability. But at the same time, you do kind of look at the team and go, he doesn't change it much.
He's quite an old school manager in the sense that he's got his guys,
Uh-huh.
and I don't like that. I'm not a big fan of that.
Because I'm like, Kenny McLean should be in there.
No way should Kenny McLean be anywhere near that starting 11.
Especially when the midfield is one of our strongest points. It's one of our strongest points in the team, and you're going, I would rather give it to a younger guy than Kenny McLean. Do you know, like, Ryan Gold has done well in America. Like, we've not seen him play much, but I'd rather give a 25-year-old guy in his prime doing well in America some game time than a guy that in his 30s that's clearly past his prime. Do you know what I mean? You're like, you need to be looking at the future here. For as much as we're saying that Ryan Gold and Ben Doak and all that are good enough, they're young players with bags of potential. And could they both be eventually better than the likes of McLean, the likes of Christie? Absolutely. But you need to play these guys. You need to give them a chance to get used to what it's like to play for Scotland.
Yeah.
And I think that, you need to look at what are the ceilings of these players. And so when we look at our younger players, especially in the Nations League, get them played, get them out there, get them having a feel for what it's like to play for Scotland. Because the earlier you do that, the more success we'll have when they get to the 24, 25 and things like that. Because even when you look at when you're talking about our real core of quality, McGinn and McTominay and Robertson, McGinn is just turned 30. Robertson's in his 30s. Do you know what I mean? You need to start looking at the fact that these guys aren't going to be top quality players forever. Do you know what I mean? These guys are going to start going downhill in the next 2-3 years. So who's coming in for McGinn and Robertson?
Yeah.
Guys like that. And you can't keep relying on Tierney coming back because I don't know what's going on with that guy. The point is that there needs to be a plan of knowing that, when you look at our core quality group that we've got, they're all starting to age a little bit. Obviously, they're still in their prime. They still got a few good years left. But, you need to start planning out who could potentially come in and let's try and bed them in a little bit.
Yeah.
Because Ben Doak's not really getting played because the system doesn't suit his position. But again, in that amount of time as a coach, you need to have more than one system, surely. So I agree with what you're saying, but I do understand the frustrations a little bit. I do think there's a little bit of just wanting them out for the sake of wanting them out. And it's one of those, I do believe overall that it's one of those be careful what you wish for situations.
Yeah.
Because, the best we could probably get is David Moyes. And I'm kind of...
Please God, no.
I know, I'm like, yeah, exactly. So I just think, I would stick with him. But considering the quality of the teams you played against, but I do think he's going to have to look at some other way of playing because it's frustrating the fans. And I think that even if you don't get the results, try and show the fans that you're trying something else, because you've went to 2 Euros and it's not worked. It's not worked. We haven't really laid the glove in both of those campaigns.
I think, yeah, and I think we've covered pretty much everything. And I was going to ask you, do you think he'll stay? And you're saying that you would like to see him stay. I think it's important to remember that before that Euros in 2021, we hadn't been to a major tournament since France '98, and that included Walter Smith, Alex McLeish in charge. So these are two good managers, and I think they had better squads than to work with. I think Walter Smith would have probably got us to a Euros or something if he'd have stayed. But I think the context is important to remember that we've just went to back-to-back major tournaments. and Scotland haven't done that since 1996 and 1998. So that's where I'm like, that's why my answer was no at the start. Like, I think he's getting everything he can out of quite a poor squad. Like you're saying, all the quality players that we're mentioning are aging, you know, and not in their prime anymore. So, and to answer you on like where does the new sort of breed? I don't see where they come from. Callum McGregor's probably, like, for me, Callum McGregor. I had a big argument with a mate where I was like, I think Callum McGregor's better than McGinn. I genuinely think McGregor could walk into almost any team in Britain. And he's retiring. He's retired, so he's not there anymore. And you're like, well, who's coming up? You know,
Yeah.
Where is the next Scott McTominay? And I just don't see it appearing. Now that's a bigger problem for Scottish football. We don't produce quality players anymore.
Yeah, that in itself is a whole different video. But I think that the point, really the overall point is, we've got a reasonably good structure in a place with a manager that knows his players, and it's like a case of when you look at the whole everything overall, there's not many good options squad wise or manager wise. So let's keep the head, keep calm, and remember, you know, like where we're at here. You know, we're not world beaters here. We've played Portugal and Poland home and away, and lost both games with a last minute goal. You know, against two quality teams. I mean, you can't really say much about Cristiano Ronaldo popping up on the 92nd minute and scoring, you know, away from home against Portugal. Up until then, you're thinking 1-1 against them is a great result. So there's context to these games as well. We've actually, when you look at the results purely in those last two games, we've gave them a good goal, and they just haven't gone away. But I don't think we've been annihilated in either of those games. So stick with the manager, keep the head, and I think Scotland will get better as time goes on, hopefully. That's just wishful thinking. But hope you enjoyed the video, and again, plenty more content to come. What are your thoughts on Steve Clarke? Let us know in the comment section. Who would you have coming in as the next Scotland manager if you did replace him? Let us know. But until next time, I'll see you then.